What's poppin' gamers, it is me Leon with a brand new 7 quick tips video. Today we're starting off something really special. Y'all don't know it yet, but we're gonna finish off this here month of October with some wild stuff. Halloween is around the corner and I've got some big plans for you guys. But first, in today's video we're gonna be talking about medieval castles. Everyone's tried to make a castle before in Minecraft. I mean, the game really tries to get you to build in a medieval style with all these stone blocks and whatnot. It's a pretty normal direction for players to take. But we're not gonna make any dumb old gray fort, oh no, we're going hard for this build. I want this thing to be huge, gothic, and awe-inspiring. Well, that's a little bit ambitious, but you know, we're gonna build something pretty nuts, so stick around. But enough talk, let's dive right into 7 quick tips for medieval castles in Minecraft. Thank you to Hari Haran JS for the video idea. 1. Ain't no good castle without a hill, or at least a clearing. In my opinion, castles need a high up point or a big open area to look best, like the top of a hill or partway up a mountain, that kind of thing. But if you don't want to build in a hilly biome, that's okay. Your castle can also look fine in a large forest clearing, which means that it's worth doing some terraforming before you start your build. Cut down trees to make space, smooth over those rough patches in the ground, and if you really want to go nuts, maybe raise the terrain up by a little bit. The only exception I can think of where you wouldn't want your castle in a large open space is some sort of ruined castle. If you're going for an old, crumbling kind of build, then try a humid biome like a jungle or a swamp. You could have pieces of the walls drooping into the water and vines crawling up the windows. It would look really dope. 2. Plan your layout. Okay, castles are really complicated in terms of their layout. Like seriously, if you look at any large castle, it's got all these windows, different rooms and elevations, multiple different entrances. It's almost never just a regular old box. It's really important that your castle doesn't just become a big square. Being creative with shape is like one of the best ways to make a build look good. If you're wondering how to make a layout, I like doing it this way. Use a block that breaks easily and doesn't blend in with your surroundings and lay out a design on the ground. I'd imagine you're building on grass, so try using maybe wood planks or terracotta. Once you start putting blocks down, try to imagine the footprint of your castle. When it's fully built, what areas do you want it to cover up? Don't be afraid to draw out a bunch of crazy shapes because you can always change it later. It's better to start with a really insane shape and scale back your wacky ideas than to start with a boring box and struggle to make it look good. 3. Go nuts with the gray blocks. Yeah, so remember when I mentioned before how Minecraft lends itself to a medieval style? This is what I mean. Castles are primarily built out of stone with maybe some wood in a few places. And just think about the sheer amount of gray blocks in this game. I mean, we've got every stone variation, every smooth stone variation, every stone brick variation, every andesite variation, every deep slate variation, all of the coral blocks, tuff, all the basalt variations, all of the blocks made out of iron like anvils and iron bars, cauldrons, acacia logs, both kinds of gray concrete, both kinds of gray concrete powder, both kinds of gray wool, cyan terracotta, and that's not even the entire list. Now you shouldn't only be building with gray, more on that later, but it's a really good starting point. Try sitting down with all of your gray materials and just putting them in different combinations. Figure out what makes your brain go ooh, and start building off of those ideas. Check out the block combos that I'm using in my castle. Don't forget about texture gradients. If you want a tutorial on that, check out my 7 quick tips video on texturizing your builds and my video on adding color to your builds. Shameless plug, I know. 4. Layer different rooms in unique, creative ways for a really cool multi-leveled effect. Okay, so we've got a footprint layout on the floor and we have a general idea of the main blocks that we're going to be making this castle out of. It's time to put in the rooms. Remember what I said about having a unique shape? That also applies to when you build up the sides of the castle too, not just the floor. The coolest gothic fantasy castles have tons of different layers to them, meaning that each of the little rooms or roof pieces or walkways are all on different heights and in different positions. This is pretty hard to describe, so let's take a look at an example. Here's a picture of a real-life historic castle. You can tell that this thing was built for function over form, and that's okay. But you can see that there aren't very many shapes here. It's really just a bunch of cylinders connected by rectangles. We have a clearly defined bottom layer with some towers poking up into the top layer. Now take a look at this thing. This is just a drawing and not actually real, but that doesn't really matter in this case. It's Minecraft. Minecraft. Look at all these different shapes and complexities. There's so many different levels here that I cannot even begin to count them all. Not only is this castle bigger, but it's also more detailed. Yeah, so in your builds, more complexity is better. Don't go too overboard, but for a gothic fantasy castle, it's actually pretty hard to do so. Don't be afraid to go nuts with your imagination. 5. Bring in some shapes and designs from Gothic architecture. It'll make your castle look super rad. Let's take a minute to scroll through the internet search results for Gothic architecture. What are the most common shapes or patterns that you see here? I could see a lot of pointy roofs, big round windows with fancy designs, vertical lines running up and down, and tall, thin tower buildings. These are, in my opinion, some of the defining traits of Gothic architecture and therefore any cool medieval fantasy castle. Let's try and recreate some in Minecraft. Once you've got a healthy amount of gray, throw in some bright accent hues. Gray is your main color, but we need more than that. Any good build has primary colors, which are usually more desaturated and subtle, like gray, and some more vibrant accent colors. In my case, I'm going to be making the roof pieces out of orange and blue. I think it adds a really cool rusted, weathered look. For my block palette, I'm using multiple different kinds of copper, acacia wood, warped wood, and other kinds of vibrant blocks. And here's how I've implemented these colors on the roof. I've also gone ahead and added bits of color detail to the windows. Check out how the dark brown and the black makes these decorative pieces pop just a little bit more. 7. A good castle needs more than just a building. So we've got this really cool big open space that we're eventually going to fill up with a castle. That's cool and all, but what about all this space around it? It doesn't make sense just to have a castle sitting here in the middle of nowhere. Try adding in some pathways, lookout towers, stables, or other infrastructure in the immediate area. Here you can see I've put down a winding footpath going from the forest up to the front door and a stone retaining wall. I've also added a bit of landscaping and a couple custom pine trees to the outside ground. It really makes all the difference between a bland exterior and a fully developed one. Alrighty fellas, you might be wondering, hey dude, why didn't you finish the castle? You just kind of built like random pieces of it? Like what the heck? Good question. Why don't you tune in next week for a very special Building Better Biomes video, and you can see how this mega castle looks fully constructed. I think it would be a pretty good idea. Until then, thanks for watching to the end of the video. Be sure to destroy that subscribe button, and I shall see you all again very soon. Peace.